Welcome, everyone. Please take your seats. We're going to start in a few minutes. We're very pleased that everyone is here this Friday afternoon to join us to learn about how to become a very diverse and inclusive organization and how these amazing organizations have done it in the last year. So please welcome. Welcome, everyone. We're just allowing colleagues to join us. Grab your lunch if you're in the West Coast, your coffee if you're in the East Coast. We're going to start in a few minutes. If you have any questions, you can send it in the chat. I'll be happy to take a look to your questions, happy to answer them in the chat. Walter, are we ready? Do you want to start now?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Wonderful. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Amparo. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this new webinar of museumexpert.org. I think we are at number 15 or 16 or something of that sort for the first time on a Friday. So we're looking forward to how that's going. So I'm Walter Stavros. I'm the founder and president of museumexpert.org. For those of you who don't know us, this organization was created originally in 2020 to respond to the crisis in the museum sector because of the COVID pandemic. As you all know, thousands of people had been laid off and not much was going on at that time to help them or to give them perspective of what was going on or what's going to happen after that. And my feeling was that many of these people, and most of these people, if not everyone, didn't really deserve to be laid off, that they have not chosen for that, and that they were even more ready to actually participate in the rebuilding of the field and contribute to the conversation about what the field should look like after the pandemic. And because that was not really happening, we created museumexpert.org, first as a sort of a dating site to help people connect with employers and find temporary jobs or small jobs that they could do on a short period of time. But very quickly, because of our conversations with these people, we found out that we could offer other services. And the first was help them to find a job, to re-enter the workforce by giving them the tools to create a good resume and how to prepare for a video interview and what you do after an interview to what do you say to an employer that you have spoken to and things of that sort. But from the beginning, I always thought that we needed to work on two legs, having these tools to be ready to go back to the workforce. But the other leg is to have an idea of what the big picture is, what's going on, and what are the trends. And so if you're going to go back in the museum field, you should be better prepared to know what the museum field is going to look like. And so we created a number of webinars on that big picture idea as well. So we have continued working on that. And we have seen a sort of a big move and shift in our membership over time, seeing that today we have 2,500 people in our network, and most of them are working and not people out of work. And so obviously people are coming for webinars like these, who are really addressing basic topics for the field. So our immediate future is that what we try to do is to address individuals who work in the museum field, to help them build fulfilling careers. And to be able to do that, we are trying to consider the museum staffs in museums as a community. We are trying to build community. And as I said before, there are a number of rules in building a community, and the first one is to care for each other. And so that's what we are looking for when we look at the museum and the staff in museums. How can people care for each other to have fulfilling careers? And one essential part of that is also, how does your community that you create in your museum reflects the community that is outside of your museum? And how does that connect to each other? And that comes directly to the conversation of today. If you want to reflect your community, you have to be inclusive, and you have to accept diversity, and you have to make sure that people who from diverse origins come into your museum, that not only you accept them, but that you give them the space to grow. And so that's a very essential part from our work. This is very central to what we think. And so I thank Amparo and the speakers for joining us today to give us a little bit more insight how that is possible. And I hope you're going to all learn from that. And when I'm thanking people, again, I have to thank AAM, who provides us with the platform to do this. So thank to you, Amparo, to the speakers, and to AAM. And now I'm going to disappear and leave it up to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter, for leading these efforts at museumexpert.org. And hello, everyone. My name is Amparo Leyman Pino. I'm the principal and founder of Yellow Cow Consulting. We're focused on helping organizations to become more diverse and inclusive. And I help organizations, but also organizations help me and inspire me to do my work. And that's why I put together this amazing panel of colleagues to help also you as part of the field to be inspired this afternoon. We're gonna start with Erin and Eric from OMSI. Erin Graham, she is the president and CEO at OMSI, and Eric Buenrostro Azua is the vice president of people and culture. And after them, we're gonna listen to the presentation of Joe Imholt. Joe is a dear colleague, but also he works at the backend, where he not only leads as the deputy director, but also he is an inspiring force inside the backend, a science center in Minneapolis. And lastly, but not least, Elaine McGinn, who is the vice president of, oh, your title just changed, Elaine, but bear with me. Elaine McGinn is the Chief Experience Officer, which is very cool because really her job has been shifted because of this work of diversity and inclusion within the Desert Botanical Garden in Arizona. So I hope that this amazing panel is as inspiring it is to me and my work. And I'm gonna hand over the microphone to Erin and Eric while I share my screen so they can start the presentation.
Thank you so much, and thanks for including us today. We're really excited to talk with you a little bit about the journey that OMSI has been on for many, many years. So we can just dive right in. Next slide, please. So as we began our journey, and we have, I think, grown a lot, we've recognized that equity really has to be a part of everything we do and part of the system of how we engage community, how we make decisions at every level of the organization, including the highest strategic decisions down to the decisions that we make, or that staff make throughout the organization, and that it's really the responsibility of all of us to be continuing to learn, to grow, to strengthen our understanding of different cultures, different ways to be inclusive, and to really center the communities that we're working with and that we want to serve in participatory decision-making. So when we think about our strategic context as an organization, we have a 20-year vision. We do 5-year plans toward that 20-year vision. We have our values and our mission, as museums do, and we have an equity action framework that is more of a process map that Eric will talk about how we developed and how we use it in a moment. Next slide, please. So in our 20-year vision, which is this document that you can see it in front of you, we made sure to include a statement about equitable impact and the type of change that we wanted to be a part of and see in 20 years from the time that we created this. We're now about 13 years out. But we're making really, really great progress. And if you go to the next slide, please. This is what the 20-year vision says, that we will dismantle barriers to equity and access to the experiences OMSI provides and create welcoming environments where all people can reach their full potential, and we lead with racial equity. That last phrase took a lot of discussion throughout the organization and with our board, because it's very easy when you're doing this work to take race off the table or to focus on equity and inclusion and sort of ignore that aspect of it. But we know that that identity and all the different forms of identity intersect with race, and that race can be a leading indicator about what people's outcomes might be, what opportunities might be available to them. And so we wanted to hold ourselves accountable to this vision by not allowing ourselves to take race off the table. And so it is a consideration in our work and the types of programs, exhibits, and experiences that we provide. Next slide, please. And our core values also focus on this, and the idea that we want to practice making sure that we are centering accessibility and equity for all the audiences that we serve and for our staff. And so that's why we are continuing this work, and we're continuing to focus on it. We do have an equity statement as well, but it's not enough to have a statement. It really takes examining all the systems that are in place in an organization and really figuring out how to make systemic change. And then that helps to inform our 5-year strategies toward our 20-year vision. And you'll see one of the swim lanes there says advance equity and inclusion. And that's because we have some very specific initiatives within this 5 years that we are focused on in expanding and deepening our equity work. And it actually touches every aspect of what we do throughout the organization. So these are priorities that are interwoven across our plan and that really help guide our work. Next slide, please. I'll turn it over to Eric.
Thank you, Erin. Well, as Erin already mentioned, when we first started digesting all of these concepts of equity, diversity, and inclusion, we realized that, like many organizations, that there is complexity and the work is emotionally taxing. So initially, part of the work that we went through implied getting together all of our thoughts, and then in going through a process in which the entire leadership team participated in creating what we called the Equity Action Framework. And that framework the very first iteration of it was a really, really long document, maybe 6-7 pages, that was philosophically dense and difficult to understand. But everybody understood it. Everybody who were part of creating it understood what it meant, but it was not easy to explain. So what we decided to do is to socialize the concepts, and decided to focus on the audience that we needed to better understand these concepts. And we were like, well, if we need to make sure, we came with a realization that we need to make sure that everybody in the organization knew what we were talking about. So we created this illustration of the main principles of the Equity Action Framework. Again, it starts with a little bit of philosophy of why we're doing this work, but then it goes to very tactical work that we have divided in 3 areas. The first one is called capacity development. The second one is evaluation and reporting. And the last one is systemic integration. And these main concepts are the big picture idea that we use for every decision that we make. And essentially, part of what we are saying as part of the framework is that we will apply these concepts to every size decision. So everybody can have can participate. Everybody is empowered to doing something, and it goes from anything like welcoming our guests to designing a new exhibit. So all of this framework is scalable based on any type of decision that we make, as long as we are at any given point working on these 3 main strands of work. So capacity development is all about learning, growing, practicing humility, and understanding that we will never stop learning. So we will continuously force ourselves to be outside of our comfort zone. Once we grow comfortable, then we will put ourselves outside of that bigger comfortable zone to keep growing. And that's what capacity development is about. Keep learning. But then do something with that learning. And that is systemic integration, which is how what you are learning will be used to change the way we do things, to produce different outcomes. And finally, we just report that with our evaluation and reporting tools. Next, please. I think that we created a strategy of engagement so that staff further socializes these concepts and work on specific sub-strands of work for each one of the 3 main areas. Next, please. And then we have a collection of indicators that will tell the story of what we're doing and how we are achieving what we set as part of the vision and as part of every 5-year plan. So I think that because we're running out of time, I'm going to go real quick through that. I think that maybe I will leave it like this and pass it on to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Erin and Eric, for sharing with us this framework. For me, it's very inspiring. We have done a couple of projects together. I've been the advisor for your latest exhibition, Creatividad Silvestre, and you can see all these graphics in life. They're not just talking. They're really congruent. That's the best word I can say, congruent with this framework. So very inspiring to know you. And now we're gonna shift and we're gonna go to Minneapolis with Joe Impel. And he's gonna share with us what they're doing at the back end. So I'm gonna share my screen so Joe, that we're all good. And the microphone is yours. I'm gonna shift the spotlights and all yours, Joe, go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you, Amparo. Thank you, everybody. You can move to the next slide, please. Just a really quick, because I suspect that many folks aren't familiar with the Bakken Museum. There's some quick information about us. I think that the highlight here is something that when I joined the organization 3 years ago, I was very excited about, is that we actually reach more people outside of our walls than we do on site at the museum, which I think is an amazing testament to the work that has been done here for a long time. Next slide. We have a rather unique name because we were founded by Earl Bakken. He is the founder of Medtronic and the inventor of the external pacemaker. He was inspired by the film Frankenstein when he was a child. He credits that as his inspiration for the pacemaker. And as a result, our focus ties STEM and humanities very closely together. So next slide. In that vein, and in thinking of this kind of this capacity development that Eric and Aaron were talking about, what I'm going to talk about is a program that we have here at the Bakken that where we have consistent DEI conversations. These are regular conversations about equity that are a focus to grow personal understanding. And go ahead, and Amparo, you can just kind of click through these, and I'll, as I finish them, just jump ahead. And each conversation is based on some shared content. It could be a TED Talk. Over the last year and a half, we read How to Be an Anti-Racist together, where we read a chapter a month and then dug into it deeply. It could be something like that. These conversations are intended to be focused on the content that is allowed us to have learning and shared conversations with our peers. And so the learning comes from the content and from the peers, not from the leadership of the organization or from the facilitators. The content and learning comes from, the learning comes from the content and your peers. Next slide. This approach is a matchup of a bunch of different learnings from over the years. It's a combination of organizational change models, training around racial justice facilitation and talking circles, intercultural development models, and participation in various DEI research projects. Next slide. And the goals are to maintain a consistent sense of urgency for DEI work at the museum. And in this case, I mean urgency, meaning necessity, not expediency. I've experienced, I'm sure others as well, is that the urgency for DEI in our culture tends to fluctuate depending on what's happening in the outside world. We've had, since the murder of George Floyd, there was an increased interest. And I would say right now we're kind of in a decreased level of awareness. Well, there's still some, but that kind of up and down level of urgency around DEI, we're hoping to make that a consistent high level of urgency by having these consistent focused conversations about DEI at the organization. It's to increase personal understanding, individual understanding of DEI, because that's where the work begins, is with each of us. It's intended to normalize conversations about DEI. So anytime we're having a conversation about a program or an exhibit, or it's coming up anywhere that just feels normal and natural and should be happening. And the last goal is a personal goal for me as a leader, is to not impose what I think should have happened on the process, but to allow the process and the participants to drive and shape the direction of the overall outcome. So just some real quick additional details. The conversations take place at our monthly all-staff meetings primarily. These are 20 to 30-minute conversations. And right now, for example, this fall, we're learning about the land our museum is on, its history, the treaties that are related to our land, blood quantum, that sort of thing. We also have a summer equity series. In the summer, we don't have all-staff meetings. So what we do is we share out a brief video or article at the beginning of the week, and then staff are asked to have informal conversations. And then I, for example, have formal conversations in my one-on-ones with staff, and others do as well. And all time for this is paid. It's included in our regular work. Space is made for it. It's not additional work. It's not work that we anticipate people do on their own and not get paid for it. Let's see, as an almost entirely white organization, we look to have diverse perspectives in many ways in the content. So it's not, there's a diversity represented in the content that is not present otherwise in our organization. Next slide. So we're using John Cotter's 8-step model for organizational change as a model for this. And I'm just going to very briefly go through the first 3 steps. Again, this is to create a sense of urgency, meaning necessity, not expediency, and increasing expectation that this is a thing that's going to happen. Let's normalize this. Next slide. The intention is the next step would be to form, it's an important note here is that understand that this is everyone's work. It's not the work of a specific individual or group or department. It's all of our work. And the next step in the model is to form a guiding coalition. And in John Cotter's model, this would be the leader forming the coalition. Next slide, please. And that coalition would be formed kind of with the leader's guidance. But in this case, I didn't want that guiding coalition to be something that I formed. So again, it's allowing the process to form it. So we didn't start with a DEI committee. One was suggested by staff, and that's what formed it. We also had a group that came together specifically around LGBTQ+ topics in our workplace after a conversation around how we engage in identity-focused months like Pride Month. And then from that, these groups start to help us shape our vision. And this has had an impact on our strategic plan, where one of our 3 core pillars is fully integrate DEI. And at the same time, we developed a theory of change that is, again, developed this, in parallel with the strategic plan so that they reflect one another, and the theory of change activities are reflected in the strategic plan. Next slide. Again, this is the goals that the vision and so forth is collected or is collectively formed, and not just the viewpoint of a few individuals. I'm just gonna, this is one of many layers. I think of these conversations as kind of the foundation. These are the things that allow us to have all of these other conversations, that allow this other work to take place, or to inform this other work. So it's kind of it's the baseline. It's this capacity development in a lot of ways that I think Aaron and Eric were talking about. Next slide. So there have been a lot of challenges with this particular work. There's this, as a primarily white organization, we have a lot of fear of making mistakes. And we've been really focused on this conversation of that progress is more important than perfection, that we're going to make mistakes, and it's about how we respond to those mistakes that's important. There's a particular interest in our board to have more concrete goalposts. And so this fuzziness that comes with letting the process drive the outcomes is a challenge. And again, we think a lot about letting that the direction we're moving is more important than an exact destination. And the rate of change is always a conversation we're having. And somebody else said to me when I was having this conversation with them, is that you will always be moving simultaneously too fast for some people and too slow for others. And to just acknowledge that and know that you're not going to move at the right pace for everybody. And so that's been a very helpful thing for me, and also that people will look for check boxes to indicate progress. And as we all know, this is box checking work. And finally, the last challenge is that COVID has really been a significant challenge because, again, as someone else explained to me, that as our individual anxiety increases, our ability to empathize with others decreases. And so COVID, even though we've had some pretty significant cultural moments during that time that have really elevated DEI, I often wonder about how much of our own personal anxiety has actually prevented further movement from happening, and how that personal anxiety has allowed kind of that movement to be eroded over time, and in particular to kind of lead to one of these valleys in our cultural kind of urgency around DEI. And I think that's everything for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you for sharing this. As we can see, the work of the AI is not only one lane, right? We have things in the strategic piece. Erin and Eric were talking about a lot how that impacts the content. And now Joe walk us through on a way of creating capacity in the staff, which is another aspect very important on understanding the shift in the culture. So now it's time for Elaine to inspire us with the Desert Botanical Gardens own journey. So Elaine, the floor is yours. I'm gonna share my screen so you know your slides are up. And
Okay.
go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I don't know that I have a lot to offer, except from coming from a garden perspective. As Amparo's already shared, I'm the Chief Experience Officer at the Desert Botanical Garden in Phoenix, Arizona. I oversee the visitor-facing departments, education, exhibits, marketing events, and the frontline team. And just a little bit about the garden. We are situated on 140 acres in the heart of Phoenix. We have 55 acres that are cultivated primarily with arid land plants, and we have the largest collection of cactus and succulents in North America. We are an accredited museum and one of the few formal science education centers in the country that focus on the study of desert flora, ecology, and conservation. Next slide, please. Our average annual paid attendance is 450,000, of which about 40% are from tourists and 60% local. And both our mission and vision emphasize our commitment to the community. And our big idea is to transform the visitor experience into one of discovery and to help everyone enjoy the beauty of the desert and to care about it. We have four garden values that include stewardship, interdependence, authenticity, and accountability. The first two values, stewardship and independence, focus on protecting the plants and habitats and embracing biodiversity. The second two, third and fourth, authenticity and accountability, are focused on community and social responsibility, reflecting the Sonoran Desert's natural heritage and cultural history, and to act ethically and responsibly as we serve our diverse community. Next slide. So the gardens historically have a perception of being elite and non-inclusive. And in many ways, while gardens have been participating in conversations around diversity and inclusion for many years now, we were a little behind in coming to the table and behind in the museum culture overall. If you look at the garden demographics from across the country, it's pretty consistent in skewing toward white women over 55 years old, college degrees, and more often than not, no children living in their household. The Desert Botanical Garden did extensive data with market research on audiences that were underserved by us. And there were three audiences that we identified in our strategic plan as priorities for increasing participation: the Hispanic Latinx community, millennials, and children and their families. Next slide, please. One of the interesting things about Phoenix that it is and the garden is 46% racially diverse, and the largest diverse populations with the Hispanic Latinx community. This community represents 31% of Maricopa County, which is the county that we reside in, but only 20% of current garden visitors were of Hispanic or Latino community members. Families and children comprise a significant and growing population of Phoenix metro area. And the path to that audience had been outlined already by several other public gardens in creating a children family garden. As you can imagine, given that our plant palette and our collections are cactus, things are not always children friendly. So creating a space where children can run and be free and really enjoying being outside in nature and enjoying playing with water and plants and all those things was really key to making this be a much more family-friendly environment. Next slide. So we sort of lost track here. Some of the things that we began with our garden journey, building on existing initiatives. We were not starting at zero with respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We had organizational and strategic planning from that's been laid in previous plans. Those initiatives included a community day where we opened the garden to once a month to the community free of charge. We had created an interpretive master plan that laid the framework for providing visitor-centered experiences that were accessible and designed to engage with diverse audiences. This process included a lot of listening sessions among different communities to learn how we could be partners and build partnerships to create programming both at the garden and out in the community. And we also extended our impact beyond our garden gates through 2 successful community-based programs. One was focused on a partnership with over 60 organizations and preserving open spaces for recreation, education, and relaxation. And the other is a partnership with a community farm and market that's helping create a neighborhood food system in a Phoenix community that is known as a food desert. Then we knew that to be successful, we needed to include both internal and external initiatives. And let's see where we're at. Oh boy. There were some challenges, as you can imagine, as the others have shared also. We have, I'm sorry, I lost track. Time and resources. It takes time to build relationships and address the needs and issues relevant to the community. Capacity building, reaching and engaging with community includes new audiences as well as presenting with current audiences more deeply. And then creating and maintaining strong foundations with programming and how we measure our internal effectiveness and external impact was really key for building some of the challenges. Our next slide. The successes that we really have been very proud of, we've been building more momentum across board and staff support through staff training. We have developed in the last 2 years through a program that we call the Community and Audience Engagement Challenge. We've developed 120 new partnerships across the community. And it's not just making a connection, it's really building relationships, which we believe is very important to this process. We have seen incremental change to visitor diversity. So how do we measure our success? We have a tool, a geofencing tool, where we're able to see not only the age of who's coming to the garden, and you can see we've seen increase since 2018 when we began tracking these, but also next slide through the racial diversity as well. Especially with the Hispanic Latinx market. We're up 4% since 2017. Our goal is to increase over the next, through our next strategic plan at a 2.5% annual increase each year across all markets. And that's what we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine, for sharing all these successes, hurdles, and also your journey, which is, for me, is fascinating to see how you started from, oh, let's do an bilingual interpretation plan. Oh, wait, we need to make it a institution-wide process, right? So this is the time. Can we show appreciation to our colleagues for these presentations? And I invite everyone in the audience to put your questions in the chat. I'll be voicing them out to our panelists. And I have Beth and Adrienne raising your hands. Walter, is it customary to allow them to talk, or do they need to put them in the chat? Can you help me with this?
We usually don't do it, but I said I'm flexible in most circumstances. So if that's the way we move forward, that's the way we move forward. There's no problem.
Okay, good. Let's try that one. Beth, are you ready to be on camera? I'm gonna allow you to talk.
That's fine.
Awesome. How can
Hi, I was just actually raising my hand to say that chat is disabled, so we can't post our questions, but if you enable it, we could go back to that.
Oh, okay. Do you have any? Oh, so that's your comment only? Yeah.
That was my comment. I did have a question for Eric in relation to, oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute, let me make sure I'm on the right one. Hold on, I apologize. I was really wanting to talk about the chat situation. Oh, I know, actually my question was to Aaron. At some point, would it be possible for you to put your 20-year vision just visual again for a minute at the end or something? Thank you.
It's also in their website. So you can go to OMSI's website and it's accessible, 100% accessible. If you want to go deeper and zoom in and zoom out, it's in OMSI's website. But Erin, I don't know if you want to say something about it more in detail, or why do you have it there? And
it's just transparency, and we want the community and everyone that we're working with to know what we're hoping to achieve. So yes, our 20-year vision, our 5-year plan, our values are all on the omsi.edu website.
thank you. Thank you. And I think I'm gonna bring people to ask, because I don't know how to enable the chat. So Adrienne, I'm gonna allow you to talk. You've been with your hand up this time. So do you want to share something with us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi
Welcome.
there. I just wanted to let you know that chat is actually disabled, so nobody can actually ask questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're trying to troubleshoot, but if you have a question, you have the microphone to share with us.
Oh, it's okay. I just wanted to let you know.
Okay, awesome. I'm gonna.
So Amparo, while you're trying to fix that, I don't know how you're going to do it, because I don't have the instruments here to do it. But I have maybe a question for all the speakers, and it's a very simple one. If you have to tell someone outside of your organization an example of why what you're doing is successful, an example or a story, what would you tell someone? This is what we do, and this is why it works. Okay, I see Joe. You go first.
Sure. So the LGBTQ plus task force is an example that I would point to, that was not a specific goal at any point, but came out directly from having conversations about how we participate in identity themed months. Do we want to be publicly participating in Pride Month, for example? And this group self-formed to have a conversation about if we want to do that, if we want to have that public outside facing presence, we need to make sure that we're representative and equitable inside. And so having, I think that group forming and having the space to form and then being given the authority to make a set of recommendations and the space and the time in their schedules is an example of success for us.
Erin.
Does that mean Eric?
Oh, I said Erin, but it's fine.
Aaron, okay.
Okay, I would point to the culturally specific family science nights that we're now hosting. That was also something that came out of these just community discussions and creating affirming places for our community to see themselves in science and to experience the museum socially. And so we've now hosted a Latinx family science night. We're working on a Black family science night, an Indigenous family science night. And it's creating different conversations with those communities and different ways of centering their expertise and in science. And I think that that's pretty exciting. Eric, I'll turn it over to you.
There's so many things that I want to talk about, but to be concrete, what we are producing is beginning to change, and it's very palpable. So we produced the very first exhibit that is traveling right now that leads with Spanish language. That's a very tangible sign. It leads with Spanish, it follows with English. We have another exhibit on the floor right now that is not too old, that talks about heat islands using social justice lens. So it teaches science, but it also teaches about the consequences of not planning for just outcomes. Very personal to me. A couple of weeks ago, we had a managers meeting, and as part of that exercise, we wanted to reintroduce everybody. And the exercise we came up with was, form a line from the person who has the longest tenure to the person who has that was just hired. And as people started introducing themselves, when it got to me introducing myself at 5 years with a museum, knowing that my position was created with the intentionality of driving change, I also realized that in that line, I was the first person of color. And then there are some people of color after me. So it means that we are beginning to make change internally, and it's not just external facing. Yeah. So the exhibits changing, the aesthetic of the museum changing, the work that we are putting out there, the people who are at the front lines or front facing, all of that is we are diversifying the workforce, but internally, in terms of people making decisions and diversifying people who make decisions, that's also happening. So I think that is a very tangible aspect of the work.
Absolutely, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Amparo, I see that now the chat is open, so I'm
now
going to.
the chat is open, and there are questions about how do you gather information about demographics and such. I think this question is for Elaine, but if anybody else has other techniques on how do you know who's coming to your doors, please share with us. Elaine?
So this will make everyone turn off their phone. We use a geofencing tool. We've used it for the last 3 years, so that everybody that comes into the garden with their cell phones, we can tell. We know where they what their area code is, not their address, but we know who they are, where they're from, you can learn their sort of shopping, and it's kind of creepy, but it's been a very useful tool for us to track. We can tell repeat who's coming back to see us, and that's what we've been using. It's called True Trade.
Thank you, Elaine. And there's also here in the chat a question for Joe regarding which materials do you use for these conversations, and a little bit about Cotter. Please share more about the choice of Cotter 8 steps change management. So Joe, how can you share with us these two things?
Sure. So for materials, I think we've had, I don't know, it's got to be into the 50s or 60s now of pieces of materials. And I think the first thing that we've had a conversation about is something, again, I heard somewhere else, is that no material is perfect. No piece of content is exactly correct. And it's about what you can glean from the content. And so we've done things like we've watched the comedy routine Nanette. We've watched the documentary 13th. We watched Disclosure. We've seen numerous TED Talks, all sorts of articles. I'm happy to share. I actually have a running list because early on, I actually repeated one. And halfway through the staff meeting, someone was like, I think we've seen this. So I had to keep much better track. So I have a running document. I'll put my email in the list, and I'm happy to share that document with anybody. As for Cotter, it just happens to be the change model that I was trained on, that I know the most about. But the thing that always hung up for me when I was trying to practice it, in particular with DEI, is that I have an identity that has a ton of privilege. And so it is a difficult position to lead from when it comes to DEI work, I find. And so I've had much more success not trying to lead, but trying to facilitate a process that allows interest or goals or so forth to be set collectively by the group. And I still think Cotter's model works. It's just you have to let go of the leader holding the vision and letting the vision kind of come up. But I still think the model works in that way.
Yeah, and to that note, Joe, in my experience working in different places in the country and in other continents, using the Cotter model, it's been also very successful to me as well. I use it in Switzerland, started a project also in San Diego. We applied it when I had the opportunity to ignite the work at the Tessa Botanical Garden, the Chavo Science Center. So yeah, we have drank the Kool-Aid, the Cotter Kool-Aid, and they have a website and you can go there. I'm gonna put it in the chat. But there's a question to OMSI of who helped you to do this amazing strategic plan? Did you do it by yourselves? Did you hire someone who's the designer? But no, that's not the question. But how did you manage to do all this change? And it's not new, right? You have done it for many years now. So can you share your tricks under the sleeve, please?
Yes, so we did work with a planning consultant to create the 20-year vision and each 5-year plan, but I think each cycle that we've gone through, we've done more of it ourselves. So the group that we work with is called Explain. The key to it is really community listening. So what we learned from the first round of planning and the first 5-year plan that we created toward the 20-year vision and the one that we're operating in now is that we could use the planning process as a really effective community engagement tool as long as we followed up and did what we said we were going to do. So we actually helped our staff to go out and have community conversations in a variety of different communities all over the state, to ask about what their aspirations were, what they were looking forward to in the next 5 years, to share some of our high-level aspirations and to look for opportunities to amplify our impacts together. And we got a lot of really great suggestions. And that's how we coalesced around those initiatives that you see in our 5-year plan. And so there's, as you can imagine, an incredible amount of information underlying each of those little icons and graphics and cross-functional teams working on them and advancing them. But I think similar to what Joe said too, the key is really around creating opportunities for ownership. And so the ownership is really, it's also a commitment on behalf of OMSI and the community and this creation of these reciprocal relationships that we then try to steward over time. And I think that's really the key to making those plans successful.
Yeah, in my last visit to OMSI, Erin, you shared with us how your staff, you have this plan very clear in the hallways at OMSI. And can you share that anecdote with the person who was onboarding somebody from the maintenance team? Please, it's super inspiring.
Yes, we try to, as we've been talking about, we really try to create this sense of shared ownership. And so I think one of my happiest moments was when I heard one custodian orienting a new custodian to OMSI and showing them our strategic plan that was posted in the hallway and saying, we're a big part of this and about making this plan happen and a big part of guest experience here at OMSI. And it was in that team that they had that sense of ownership.
Thank you, Erin. And we have in the audience our colleague from IMLS, and he is a really, Mark, thank you so much for sharing this amazing tool of apply for grants. We have money to support these efforts. From listening sessions that Elaine mentioned, he also said OMSI has received money from IMLS to do this work. So don't be shy prepare your fingers to write those proposals, right? Elaine, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say that, yes, so we the garden, Desert Botanical Garden, got a $250,000 grant from IMLS that really catapulted everything forward. So thank you to them and for that support. And it's continued through the years and been very helpful.
Yeah, and it's like believing in the work, believing that
Yes.
we need resources to go to the communities and listen. We need resources to bring people together, to think together. Sometimes organizations don't know the way, and just to spark a little bit of direction from an external voice will help people to move forward. And Eric was saying, we started with a consultant, but now this is the way we do things inside. So it's more like a habit, right? Any other questions or ideas that you wanna share with us, dear colleagues? I have another one. Oh, now the link that Joe shared, it's working for everyone. I also shared Carter's 8 steps for leading change. There are a lot of books as well, right? That the switch, for example, for me, it's also another staple in driving change in organizations, if you wanna use it as well. But what will be, we have 4 minutes, and perhaps we can go around the room with our 4 panelists to have a last comment, or let's say an advice for our colleagues. What will you say to the field as, you know, don't forget this, or do this, don't be shy? What will be, and I will start again with Erin and Eric from OMSI.
Eric, you want to go first this time?
Yes, but I actually, Amparo, need you to please reframe the question.
Yeah, what will be your last comment or advice to our colleagues? You were saying this is very emotional and sometimes it's daunting. So what can we tell to our colleagues to continue moving forward?
Thank you for that. You know, one of my favorite phrases ever has to do with, you know, if you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But no matter what you do, keep moving forward. Yeah, keep making movement. Move. That's all that you need to do. You don't need to do heroic efforts. You can just make sure that you do something. And over time, you will see great change.
Thank you, Eric. Erin?
I echo that. I mean, and make mistakes. It's really easy to stay in our comfort zone, especially if we are white, and we can't do that. So, and we all screw up. So, you know, be gracious with yourself, be gracious with others, and we can all really make change together.
Thank you, Erin. I'm gonna go to Elaine. So I continue with the E's.
These just this is some of the most important work that I've ever been part of, and I continue to grow from it. I continue to meet amazing people like Amparo. I have the privilege of working with, and it's wonderful to meet everybody else on the screen. What I always say is it's never done, and I heard each of these panelists say this belongs to everyone, and so with that energy and that direction, I think that it will just empower all of us to be better and to make a more empathetic world.
Thank you, Elaine. And now, Joe, can you share with us your last advice or comment to our colleagues?
Sure, I'm a big fan of quotes. I can't just off camera, I have a whole wall of them. And one of the biggest is a June Jordan quote, and it's "We are the ones we've been waiting for." And so that's something that I keep reminding myself, is that there's who else but us. Let's get out there and do it.
Yeah, which ties very well with the one that I want to share with everyone, that each and all of us have power and influence to do this work. from whatever you do, from the place that you are, either you're in leadership, mid-management, or you're in the entry level of your organization, everyone has power and influence to make this movement, and it's contagious. So be contagious. We're in the pandemic era. Well, be viral, be contagious for everyone. So it's time to say goodbye. So Walter, can you adjourn this amazing webinar?
Sure, thank you so much, Amparo. First of all, thanks for bringing together that panel with the amazing stories that they have shared with us, the diversity of points of view and the dispersion over the country. And so we really appreciate that. For everyone who's listening and those later, this is recorded, so you can go back to that and use it for the reference for you. And I know some of the slides, especially from Omzi, were very interesting. And I know people who will probably go back to that and try to read in detail what was there. So thanks again for doing this. I hope we're gonna have some reactions after that. And this is not the end, as you know, we will continue addressing that topic in the near future. Thanks to AM again for providing us the platform. And I'd like to share with you the next initiative that we take. And on next month, October 25th, we will have the first of a series that is based on the book that's just been published, and it's called Change is Required. And you may have heard of it. It's a collection of 50 essays of 50 museum professionals who have looked at transformation in the field during COVID and have come up with what needs to be done for us to adapt to the new situation that COVID has created. It's edited by Marsha Semmel, Avi Decter, and Ken Yellis, that some of you may know, all amazing colleagues. And so the 25th of October, we're going to have a first series of that, focusing on, but in particular, staff development in museums and how to create the necessary change with your staff to be able to respond to the new challenges. So we're looking forward to that too. Thank you again to all the speakers and you, Amparo, for bringing this together. And we see you next time.
My pleasure. Happy weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.